Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Talk Spicy. I'm Coach Gene Clemens. Thank you for joining me wherever you are joining me. Rate the show, comment, agree, disagree, but whatever you do, keep it spicy. 5-star ratings are appreciated. If you're joining me on the YouTube channel, make sure that you like and subscribe. If you're joining me on Facebook, make sure that you are following the page. We always appreciate everything that you do when it comes to supporting what we do here. It was a pretty melancholy weekend for your boy, despite all of the what I consider to be my most wonderful sports time of the year, right around the NCAA conference and national tournament time. My grandmother passed away on Friday, and for those of you who didn't know, my grandmother was sick. She had cancer. If you followed her on social media, you knew that, and her faith never wavered one bit. She never stopped believing that she was going to be taken care of, and I'd like to believe that for however long it was, she was taken care of. And it's a sad thing when a loved one passes, but we always have to remember that we had them for the time that we had them. So I had my grandmother for a beautiful, wonderful 42 years of my life. My grandmother got a chance to see a grandchild become a grown man. She had an opportunity to see a great grandchild become a grown man. And that's something that, nobody can feel cheated by. My grandmother had an extraordinary life. She touched a lot of people. And the one bar I would say that I believe is it sums up her life as much as anything else. My grandmother always believed in education. She wanted to gain further education, so she fought for that education. At 21, 22 years old, with my mother on her hip, out there fighting for the rights, out there fighting for Black people to be educated, to have the same equal rights as white people. And my grandmother lived long enough to see her Black grandson stand in front of a classroom and educate Black and white people in the same room. That's dope, man. That's dope. That's something that I think about, and every time I think about it, it makes me smile. For me, everything that I've done in life has been about making my grandmother proud of me. And as such, I know that she is. I know that she is, and I know that every time I do something, she's watching. And so I take an immense amount of pride, an immense amount of responsibility to ensure that everything that I do is weighed and measured by whether or not she believes I'm a good person. Whether or not she is proud of the things that I've done in my life. And again, I've had a good amount of time to process this. If anybody who's ever had family members who go through illness, that is fatal illnesses, you usually get an opportunity to digest these things and start to come to grips with what the reality is going to be. So I'm not sad. I'm not sad. I'm not angry. I'm just appreciative. I'm appreciative of the time that I had with her, and I'm appreciative of the life that she lived and the legacy that she left for me to continue on. I wrote her a poem. If you follow me on Instagram or you follow me on Facebook, I put the poem on there. I appreciate all the well wishes, all the people who were reaching out to say, hey, my condolences. But I want to read for everybody else the poem. It says, my earliest memories are with you. Like sounds that ring my ears, they were so loud. Forever will recall the things you do, me thinking I just want to make you proud. That day they brought me home, you were so sad. You cried, I cried, and it left my head bowed. To me, you were disappointed in me. I know that day I didn't make you proud. My games, my plays, you never came to see. Bad academics were never allowed. And you were there for scholarly awards. And on those days, I hope I made you proud. Nothing was harder than when I sat there in that hospital, tears flowing, and I vowed that everything I have done in my life has been so that you simply would be proud. You turned to me and saw the tears flow down. My heart was broken, but you cracked a smile and squeezed my hand with all the strength you had, looked in my eyes and told me you were proud. Your life left you in the quiet evening, but the impact your life made was so loud. I'll see you one day in the afterlife. So then I'll keep trying to make you proud. I want to say rest in peace to Claudia Clemens, Grandma Susie, as everybody knew her, or Auntie Susie. There's been no one better. There'll be no one better. You will be missed. You'll always be loved, and you'll always be in our hearts. It's a funny thing about death, right? Because I do a sports podcast, and so a lot of times we equate death to the end. We equate death to the end of the game, especially if you didn't win at the end of the game. In many ways, a lot of times that duality we get criticism for, right? When you say that you're going to battle, that you're going to war against another team, a lot of times people will, especially in hypersensitive situations, will go, well, you're equating what you do to war, and there are people who are really out there dying. But these are analogies, right? And in analogies, it's not a one-to-one comparison. It's just a like. It's a similarity. You have to bond together when you go to war. You can't be individuals in war. And that's the same thing in the team game. You got to bond together. You can't be individuals in the team game. And yes, at the end of the game, when you lose, nobody is actually dead. But your chances might be dead. Your opportunity might be dead. Obviously, the chance to win that game is over. It's dead. And now you're left to ponder everything that happened within that frame of time. That's memories. The same way that when people die, you look back on their life and you enjoy the good things, you remember the bad things, you remember the stuff that made that person who they were. Is the same way that in sports, after the game is over, we sit back and we recall. We sit back and we remember, we reminisce. The next game that happens, we try to, if there's a next game, we try to have or improve on the things that we didn't do in the last game. The same way that when somebody passes away, we try to live on their legacy, and then we hopefully try to improve on the design because that's what they would have wanted. The correlations between death and the end of game, the correlations between death and losing a competition is not one that's meant to make light of death. It's one that's meant to strengthen the finality of death. The finality of it. So when that clock ticks to 0, it's over. There are no more shots to be taken. There are no more passes to be thrown. There are no more balls to be hit, pucks to be slapped, balls to be kicked. When that clock strikes 0, it's over. And the only thing that will matter at that point was what you did from the beginning number to 0. From the beginning number to 0 will be the only thing that matters when everything is said and done. That's the part. That's the part that we don't get. That's the part that sometimes we might become hypersensitive when we compare. See, I've sat on social media and I've watched people who dealt with, heartache and grief over death or whatever it might be. And I watch as they pour their hearts out. And I know that there are people back there who might ridicule, people who might have something to say. But that stuff doesn't matter. Because at the end of the day, they are doing what they need to do in order to get beyond, in order to cope. I myself tend to not share a ton of personal stuff. Even within this situation with my grandmother, I haven't really shared. But I'm proud of who she was, and I wanted people to know. Now, for me, this will probably be the last time you hear a grandiose whatever in reference to my grandmother. I can't speak for whatever the next thing might be because I haven't been through it yet. I always equate things when it comes to sports through life. That's what Talk Spice is about. It's not just about me calling people out for being bad or praising people for being good, but part of it is giving that duality of life and sports. And it gets no more final than death. It gets no more final than death. This past week, as the NCAA conference tournaments have happened, there were some teams that were fighting for their life. They needed to win the tournament in order to stay alive. And if they lost, that meant that their season was over. That was the period. That was the end. Ladies and gentlemen, that's death. It's death to everything that they've worked for within that season. And now looking back, the only thing they can do is remember the beginning to the end. If that's not a direct correlation to death, then I don't know what is. Again, it's not death. They're still living. But as a correlation, it gets no better. And so now we get ready for the NCAA tournament. And with all due respect to Dayton and what happens in Dayton, nobody believes that's the start of the tournament. And if the NCAA wants us to believe that's the start of the tournament, then they should just go ahead and expand that into a full other round. Because nobody looks at that as the start of the tournament. So when we hit Thursday, which by the way happens to be St. Patrick's Day, top of the morning, when we hit that day and it's time for new life to begin, because that's the thing we also don't talk about enough. With death comes new life. So when new life begins, everything in the NCAA tournament is life or death. Everything is you either win and it's over. I mean, you win and you go and you continue to live, or you lose and you die. That's it. And that's why, that is a big reason why the NCAA tournament is so compelling. It doesn't matter what you step in with, doesn't matter how good you were inside before we got to the tournament. 30 wins, 13 wins, it doesn't matter. If you're there, you have a chance to live. And nobody cares what you did before that point. They only care that you're there. And now the question becomes, how long will you live for? How memorable will that life be? I believe my grandmother had a memorable life. I look forward to seeing what these teams will have. Ladies and gentlemen, that's Talk Spicy. I'm Coach Gene Clemens. Do this thing a few times a week. Rate the show, comment, agree, disagree, but whatever you do, keep it spicy. 5-star ratings are appreciated. If you're joining me on the YouTube channel, like, subscribe. If you're joining me on Facebook, make sure you're liking the page. Everywhere else, you know what to do, at Gene Clemens. Till next time, peace.